My name is Jacqueline Skidmore. I am the director of the Usdan Institute for Animal Health Education here at AMC. This is a new initiative started last fall, and we are aiming to do a monthly event series. So this is part of that. We've had some events already that you can watch on our website, which is amcny.org/Usdan, USDAN events. And we'll be having more in the future. Next month, our topic is going to be how to choose a pet for your family. So if you know anyone who's looking for a pet, or you just kind of want to learn more about the different types of pets out there, pros and cons, that information will be on our website next week. It should be on April 26th, the event. So just a couple housekeeping things. The bathroom is outside there across from the elevator. We also have a bunch of food out there, so please feel free to eat during the lecture, take some home with you. We got to get rid of it somehow, so help yourself. And you've also been giving quite a few things tonight, so thank you for assisting our check-in staff in getting through all that. But you have a survey, which I'm going to ask you to return at the end of the event to let us know what you think. We're always trying to improve the programming here and looking to see what people are most interested in. That's how we found out that behavior was such a popular topic. So just want to make sure that you fill that survey out and can return it to us at the end of the night. We've also got a raffle going, so if you haven't entered that already, please see the front desk to win one of those awesome sculptures out there. Feel free to follow us on social media tonight. If you really love Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you can find us at AMCNY or the Animal Medical Center. We're also going to try something new tonight for the question and answer portion of the event. You've been given index cards to write down your question. Then if you can return them to me or a member of the staff, and I'm going to try and collate them to common themes so that everybody's question can get answered as much as possible, and we don't have to run around with the microphone like we usually do. So, yes? No, you don't need to. Good question. If you already emailed your question, I have it, and that will be in the mix. Lastly, let's see. I think I covered everything. So I'm so excited to introduce Dr. Jean DeNapoli, who is our first guest speaker for the Usdan Institute monthly event series. She obtained her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree at Tufts University in my home state of Massachusetts. A short time later, she returned to Tufts to complete a residency in animal behavior with Dr. Nicholas Dodman. She's been working at Pieper Olson Veterinary Hospital in Connecticut since 1998 as both a veterinary behaviorist and general practitioner. She also serves in the U.S. Army Reserve Vet Corps, so she's very busy. She's a diplomat of the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine and is currently furthering her education by completing a master's in public health through University of Iowa. Personally, she owns a German Shepherd who is trained to herd sheep and an Australian cattle dog who is also trained to herd sheep and cattle. She's competed with them in various herding trials, but mostly they just hang out on the couch. She has 2 cats and a small farm with too many sheep, some ducks, and a few chickens. So please welcome Dr. DeNapoli.
It's quite an honor to come down here, and I'm glad you braved the weather to get here. Oops, got to find my little thing. So you already heard who I am, so I figured I'd get right to it. So this talk was trying to find things that you could take home with you today and maybe make your life a little better for your pets. And I figured I'd start with crate training, and a lot of people know about crate training puppies, and I think of it as a life skill. I want my dog to be comfortable with confinement because there probably are times in his life when it's going to need to be confined, whether it's going to the vet to be spayed and it's going to be confined there at the vet in a small cage until its turn, or whether I'm traveling with them. And I consider it a life skill, even if you don't need it for housebreaking, which is oftentimes what people use it for. I do think dogs should be comfortable with confinement in crates. I also think it makes sense to train your cat to be comfortable in a crate. I learned how quickly you can do this when I had 2 kittens, and they each needed medication, and it was mixed with their food, so I had to make sure that the right kitten got the right medicine. And I took to feeding one of those kittens in a crate. It took about 2 meals, and I'd walk in the room with food, and it would run in the crate and be waiting for me. And I realized, well, why not do this with every cat? Because certainly cats go into carriers when they go out to the vet, and it would be nice if you didn't have to spend 45 minutes dragging it out from underneath the couch. And also, if you ever had an emergency, if the fire alarm went off in your apartment, you want to be able to quickly call your kitty, they run into the crate, and you can leave. So start with a good quality crate. With the cats, you want it something you can carry. I find with the cats, sometimes slightly bigger than you think you need is easier to get the cat into. And just feed them in there. That's the easiest way to train your cat to go in a crate and your puppy. And when it comes to puppies, especially when we talk about confining them, I don't want to confine a puppy to a crate longer than they can comfortably hold it. So the formula that a lot of people use is the puppy's age plus 1. So a 3-month-old puppy could probably hold it about 4 hours in a crate. If you have to be gone longer than the 4 hours, then you want to have somebody pet walk or leave them in a bigger space. Leave them in a laundry room or a playpen where they have papers that they can use to eliminate, because you don't want to force them to eliminate in that little crate. Let's see. So that was crates. Another thing that is important for dogs and cats is to start socialization. And socialization, you hear that word thrown around a lot. It does have a specific meaning as far as the socialization period for dogs and cats. Starts when they're very young. Kittens probably 6 to 12 months. Puppies probably, weeks. Puppies probably 7 to 16 weeks. During that time frame, anything that they experience is going to be more easily learned when it comes to socialization than later. So that's both the good and the bad. So I work really hard with my puppies in particular to make sure they have a lot of good experiences and absolutely no bad experiences. And it's never too late to socialize and give them a positive experience, positive social experience, but you'll make faster progress with the puppies. Oh, that's okay. I think the biggest mistake people make is that they end up overwhelming their pets. They invite their friends over, they've got 6 kids, they come running over to see the puppy. Their first thought is, well, great, I want them to socialize around kids, but you want a positive association. So you don't want them overwhelmed, you don't want them picked up and passed around and dropped on the ground. You want them to enjoy being around kids, and that it really depends then on the personality of your puppy. If you've got kind of a quiet, shy puppy, you're going to have to go a little slower. A pleasant experience for a quiet puppy might be sitting on the floor with them and allowing them to climb into your lap and petting them a little bit. Whereas a positive experience with a very rambunctious, playful dog might be tug of war and throwing balls and more exciting. Another place where pets can, another social experience for pets is the vet office. And an amazing number of pets, especially dogs, can walk into a vet office and not be worried at all. However, many of them are worried, or they become worried because, of course, vets have to poke and prod and give them shots. So if your dog shows any hesitation at the vet, worried to get out of the car, or afraid to walk into the exam room, I would definitely recommend doing a little social visit to the vet a couple of times where they don't get any shots, where maybe they just walk in the front door, you feed them a couple treats and you go home. Or you have the receptionist feed them a couple treats. Or if they have an empty exam room and you can walk in and put your dog or cat up on the table and feed them a few treats. I've just started doing a little more with the treats with the cats. I kind of thought, oh, cats are going to be too nervous to take treats at the vet. But some cats are real pigs. And so come to find out, many of them will take treats, especially the kittens, because they haven't figured out that the vet's a frightening place. So I throw treats on the table. Some people get some canned food and feed them a little canned food there, just to build that positive experience so they're not afraid. Let's see. So environmental enrichment, that's actually what's in your handout. I put a bunch of ideas for environmental enrichment because it's become very fashionable to have a more enriched environment for your pet. You see that too with the zoo animals, for example. They're working very hard to make it more a more enriched environment. And we actually get some ideas from the zoo people and the laboratory people who are working with much smaller spaces and trying to make it interesting. For most dogs, food toys are often a mainstay. I just pulled these off the internet. If you go to Google and do environmental enrichment for pets, like you'll get some amazing pictures of what people have done for their pets. So the dog up there in the right-hand corner has, I don't know how many, 8, 9 toys that have little holes in them where people have stuffed food in it. And that might be what that dog explores when the owners head off to work, so that there's something for him to do while you're gone, and some good thing that happens when you leave. Because for a lot of pets, it's just nothing but badness when you leave. They're lonely, they're bored, they've no upside. So I want to give my dog an upside. When I go, at least you get some really cool toys. Some people don't even feed their dogs breakfast. All their food for the day, for the morning, is hidden in toys. Cats like food too, and they have, you can buy commercial things, commercial toys that have little balls that you can put treats in, and the cats can knock the balls around and the treats fall out. There are little puzzle toys that they stick their paws in and whack things to make it interesting. But I also wanted to mention, you don't have to spend a lot of money. This cardboard box for a cat is environmental enrichment. And now that I order from Amazon, it's nice because the boxes change every every week at least. There's a new box, so we switch it out. Some people put little holes in them. These are just little, I think they're pipe cleaners there off the box, and made a pretty cheap environmental enrichment for their cat. More expensive environmental enrichment for your cat. This is a whole little outdoor area for the cat, and I had to take the picture of it because it's got the little lamp on the table and everything out there. Cats like vertical space. So at my house, they've got a climbing tree somebody wanted to get rid of when they were moving. And then that's next to a bookcase, so they can climb up onto the bookcase and be up there. They like to climb height. Most of them like to be heights. So you can make your cat very happy by just adding things that can climb up on. You can even use your crate, your carry crate, as environmental enrichment. I leave the carry crates out, put a little bed in there, and they run in it, they climb on top of it, they sleep in it, so it can be part of your environmental enrichment as well. And this dog one, a lot of people I've seen use children's toys as your environmental enrichment, the little slides, the little toddler slide, and tunnels and things. I've also heard of people, and this is why I grabbed this picture. It's a sandbox. I don't know what they've actually got in there, if they've got sand, but I've heard of people using if they've got an outdoor play area for their dog, putting in a little sandbox, and then they go out there ahead of time and hide some toys or treats in the dirt, and then the dog can go out and dig it up. So that would be an environmental enrichment. So problem behaviors. Elimination problems are probably the most popular problem, I guess. And housebreaking for the dogs, the basics of that is really to prevent accidents. So their natural instinct, of course, is to keep their sleeping area clean, and that's why you can use the crate as kind of a crutch, because you confine them to their sleeping area, and since they try to keep that clean, they'll try to hold it. And then any place they go outside the crate is rewarding to them. They feel better whether they peed in your kitchen or whether they peed outside. So you want to, basically, you're in charge of avoiding letting them pee in the kitchen. If you see them starting to circle, I usually say any change in behavior. If they stop eating and walk away, it's time to take them out. If they wake up from a nap, take them out. If they were playing with a toy and they walk away from it, take them out. Just take them out a lot, because the more times they go outside, or to the paper if you're paper training, it rewards them. Plus, you can use treats and tell them they're great as well. For those who are wondering about what's the most common behavior problem that I see in cats, it's litter box issues. The tough thing, I guess the easy and hard thing about training cats to use a litter box is it's basically, the trick is to make the litter box the most appealing place for them to go. So cats naturally like absorbent surfaces. They naturally like to dig, and that's where the litter box comes in. And fortunately, the vast majority of cats, you don't even have to do anything. Just give them the box, walk away. They got it. But for the cats that don't, then you want to try to figure out what your cat wants. I always say you ask the cat, what does it want? So I'll do side-by-side comparison testing. So I might put my favorite type of litter in one box, and then another litter in another box, and see what's the cat's favorite. Because it doesn't really matter what my favorite is at all. It really matters what the cat likes. And so I'll ask the cat, which one do you want to use? And the other things you can do is depth. Some cats like, 3 inches of litter on the bottom of the litter box. Other cats only want, a ½ inch of litter on the bottom of the litter box. So you can ask your cat that. You can ask your cat if they want a covered litter box or an open litter box. Most like an open, but some shy cats do actually prefer a closed. So you can ask them. And the location, just like any real estate, location is what's important. So I usually say, depending on how, there are a couple of little formulas. One is, ideally, the number of litter boxes should equal the number of cats plus 1. And so if you've got 2 cats, 3 litter boxes, and that formula came up just because we know some cats don't want to poop in the same box they peed in. And some cats don't want to pee in the same box somebody else peed in. So that's where that special number came from. You can often get away with less if you are doing extra scooping. That kind of assumes that you're scooping once a day, but if you're in there 4 times a day scooping out, maybe you don't need quite as many. And I usually say out of the way but convenient. Out where I live, everybody wants to put their litter box in the basement. But not every cat wants to wander down to the basement to use the litter box. And so it is private, but it's not terribly convenient. So I'll tell people 1 on every floor, or if you're on 1 level, at least 1 on either end of the house, so that they have one that's convenient. A lot of times, too, if you're having difficulty with litter boxes, it may be because you have more than 1 cat, and you can have a cat that is a bully and just is sitting at the top of the steps, just looks all handsome and just grooming himself, and I'm looking good. But what he's doing is he's not letting the other cat go up the stairs. So if you've got the litter boxes spread out, then that 1 cat can't guard them all. Another common behavior problem, it's kind of a big class of problems, is fearful behavior. Animals can be fearful of anything, I guess. And the easy thing for me, there's only a few ways to treat it. Desensitization and counter conditioning is the mainstay of any fearful behavior. So if desensitization just means you're gradually introducing the frightening thing in such a way that they're never really scared or frightened of it during the training. The other thing is that the counter conditioning is you're teaching them to do something else. So I'll use thunderstorms for an example. If your dog is frightened of a thunderstorm, you could have a CD with thunderstorm sound effects and you could play it at volume 1 for a gentle background noise as you're feeding your dog every dinner. And so they're not afraid. It's very quiet. They're like, what? You really want it just so that they notice it, but they're not afraid. So their little ears go up, and they're like, I think I hear something. All right, but there's my dinner, so I'm going to eat dinner. So instead of running and hiding under the bed when they hear thunder, he's learning how to eat dinner when there's thunder. And then each day you turn the thunder up a little bit louder till it's full volume. So that's what desensitization and counter conditioning is. But that's basically what you'd use no matter what they're afraid of. If they're afraid of a person approaching or a location, you just gradually introduce it and then teach them to do something other than shake and hide and be aggressive, depending on what they're afraid of. And usually we're using food. Food's the easiest thing to train with because we know all animals eat. And in fact, it's such a basic instinct that even when they're afraid, they'll eat. But some dogs are crazy for toys, or even cats too. And you could use a toy as a reward, or playtime with you, or petting. But the animal has to love it. Whatever it is, they have to really like it. Occasionally, you'll hear somebody talk about flooding. And what flooding is basically you bring them, whatever's frightening them, you apply that frightening thing until the dog or cat is no longer frightened. So, for example, I use the flag and the breeze. Something's flapping, a tarp or something as you're walking down the street, and the dog jumps and goes, I can't walk past that. You're like, well, I think you can. Let's just sit here for a minute. And after a while, they're like, well, it didn't actually move. It's not coming towards me. I'm not in any danger. And then you can walk past. So it has to be something fairly mild that your dog can realize, oh, actually, I am okay? All right, good. I'll keep going. The problem comes, people try to use flooding for something big. They're like, well, they're afraid of people, so I'll take them to a parade. And I'll teach them that there's nothing wrong with people. But the problem is you can't have the parade going for the next 48 hours until the dog finally gets used to it. What'll happen is the parade will end and you'll leave before the dog has realized nothing terrible is happening. And as a result, they'll actually get more afraid. So you're actually sensitizing them, not desensitizing them. So when you're exposing them to something that's frightening, you need to wait till they can work through that. And so that for that reason, it really is only appropriate for the tiniest things that are really going to take just 2 minutes, for them to get used to and then move on. Separation anxiety. It's rarely a cat problem. They don't seem to care whether you're there or not. But I have seen it. But mostly it's a dog issue. It's really amazing that our animals do get used to being left alone, or our dogs in particular, because dogs are pack animals. And that's, I think, the difference is naturally cats tend to be a solitary animal, and dogs tend to be pack animals. And if they were on their own, living in a pack of dogs, their survival would depend on their companions. And if they got separated from the rest of their pack, they're not going to stop to eat. They're not going to stop to play. They're not going to stop to do anything. They're going to find their pack again because they're in danger the whole time they're not with their pack. So some dogs feel that way when you leave them at home, that they feel like they're in danger the whole time that you're gone. And I think the dogs that do well, I think without separation anxiety, or at least not with severe separation anxiety, is because they've kind of gotten used to it from day one. Nowadays, almost everybody seems to have to work. And so they get a puppy, they might stay home for the weekend with the puppy, but then they have to go to work. And so puppies learn from an early age, like, well, this is okay, nothing bad has happened, and they adapt. But there are a few that don't adapt, either because they're naturally anxious or because they've had some trauma in the past. Usually oftentimes it's being rehomed. If they've had to change homes, that's very stressful for them. But I have seen it start after a break-in, for example. Somebody had a break-in and now their dog was afraid to be left alone. They tend to do better if you have a routine, a steady routine, and not make a big deal about you leaving. I'm always trying to convince the dog, whether I'm here or not here, it doesn't matter. So if you make a big show of leaving, like, I love you, honey, it's only for a couple of minutes, I promise, please don't chew anything, don't pee in the house, I'll be right back. If you make a big deal about it, then they're like, well, something big is about to happen. So instead, I just, ignore them, walk out the door, maybe say something casual. I tend to say, watch the house, which just means you're not coming with me. Because otherwise, if I don't say that, they're like, we're going out the door. I'm like, no, watch the house. So that's just their little signal, but nothing dramatic. And same with coming home. This is the hardest to get people to stop doing, is usually coming home to a pet is why you have pets, because they want to say hi, they kiss you, it's wonderful. And I'll tell people, just walk in the house, because again, we're just trying to tell them there's no big deal whether I'm here or not here. So just walk in the house. It's easier if you have a plan. If you say, all right, I'm going to walk in, I'm going to get a soda, I'm going to check my email, and then you can say hi to the pet, kissy kissy, and all that stuff that you wanted to do at the very beginning. So it's not as significant you walking in the house. And that environmental enrichment stuff can be helpful. One thing I did want to mention too is that this is one problem where I tend to go to medication sooner rather than later. A lot of times when people come to the vet office for veterinary behavior, there's two types of people. There's the type of people who are like, I need drugs. Drugs for the dog, drugs for me, I can't take it anymore, it's got to fix now. And then there's the other group of people who are like, well, I'll train my dog for 6 hours a day if you tell me to, but I don't even take aspirin and I'm not giving any medication to my dog. Most people are somewhere in the middle and will say, you know what, if you think it's going to help, maybe we'll do medication. If you think it's not going to help, maybe we won't. This is one where the medication, I think, is helpful. And a lot of people look at medication as a last resort, like, I don't want a zombie dog. We're not talking about zombie meds here. We're talking about anti-anxiety meds, same kind of meds that you'll probably meet 10 people a day on Prozac. They still drive cars, they still go to work, they still do normal people behavior. Dogs on Prozac do doggy behaviors. They're just less anxious about it. And so I don't want medication to be a last resort for this condition, because those dogs are really suffering when they have their panic attacks and anxiety attacks when you're not home. Here's another one that I see a lot of is aggression to strangers. And almost always it's a fear thing. Even though they may look vicious and very mean and they're lunging and you're like, that dog does not look afraid. It's trying to take my hand off. Usually it starts with fear, and these dogs figure the best defense is a good offense, and I'll just bite them first and get them away from me. And so they're usually very loud, they're barking, they're lunging, and it's critical to manage these dogs carefully, because you can't have them biting people for obvious reasons, and also it can cost the dog its life. Because if they bite too many people, they don't get to stay in human civilization. So I'm a huge fan of basket muzzles. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They look like cages for their nose, and they can open their mouth, they can pant, you can feed them treats through it, a little whipped cream, stick it through there, or Cheese Whiz, or anything that you can slide through, and they can't get their mouth around anybody to bite. And so especially in crowded, you guys live in New York, so you know about crowds. There's no other way really to get them through a crowd without the basket muzzle. The nice thing about, because you also can use leashes, and a lot of people do, just pull their dog away and keep them on leash. But when you start to tense up and you're like, oh God, here comes somebody, and you're grabbing the dog by the collar and you're getting all worried, that travels right down the leash to the other side. They're like, whoa, you're scared of him too? All right, well, I'll do my best. I'll try to keep him away. So with the basket muzzle, you can relax a little bit. You don't have to tense up quite so much. You're still going to not let the dog lunge at anybody, but you don't have to get so quite nervous. The other thing you have to do is be very assertive. I always wish I could have all the my clients who have fear-aggressive dogs to go to an assertive traininess class, because you can sit there going, if you're too nice, people will ignore you, especially if you've got a cute dog. And you'll be like, oh, please, no, he's not really good with kids. I would prefer if you didn't, and you'll have people going, oh, don't worry about it. I've owned German Shepherds my whole life. And they'll keep walking towards you. Or all dogs love me. They call me the dog whisperer. And it's very hard to, if you're too polite, somebody's going to get bitten because they will ignore you. So I tell people you don't have to tell the truth even. You could be like, oh, I'm sorry. He was beaten by a person that looked just like you. He's got PTSD. This is just too much for my dog. So you can lie about it. You can say, I just rescued him, even if you've had him for a little puppy. Or just say, no, step back. That you cannot pet my dog. I had one client whose dog bit and it was a German Shepherd. I'm picking on German Shepherds because I see two of them and I, of course, love them. A German Shepherd in a car. She had gone for a little hike. She put her dog in the hatchback. And as she was getting her stuff together, somebody came up to pet the dog, and she said, oh, no, please, he's not good. But this person reached right into a hatchback and got bitten by a German Shepherd. And then, of course, she was on public property, and, the consequences are worse than if they bite in their own home. Let's see. And then desensitization and counter-conditioning is the treatment. It's a long, slow course to get them comfortable around strangers, and that's one where having a professional, a trainer who's good at it, or a veterinary behaviorist to help you out can be useful. Medication doesn't make a huge difference for these dogs, and it makes sense because if you're on Prozac and somebody comes at you with an axe, you don't go like, well, go ahead, just take the right arm below the elbow. It's fine. I'm on Prozac. It's all good. When person on Prozac sees a real threat, they recognize it as a threat and they act appropriately. Dogs on Prozac think everybody who's walking towards them is carrying an axe. So they are going to act just like it's a real threat. So it's not going to make a huge difference that way. It's not a magic pill. But if you're working on your desensitization, it's just too anxious to take the treat because there's a person over there, then maybe the Prozac will take a little of the edge off. So they're like, oh, wait, you've got a treat and the person's over there. I can eat it. There are dogs and occasionally cats that are aggressive to family members. And the difference with these guys is oftentimes there's not a lot of noise. There's not a lot of lunging, growling, snarling. They're not doing that big display that they do to scare away the boogeymen who are approaching on the street. I think of it more as an irritable aggression. They're kind of like, leave me alone. And that might be just a or it might be an actual bite. They don't have to do a lot of growling and snarling ahead of time. And it can be to everybody. It can be to just one or two people in the house. And usually it's in certain situations. And it's a situation where the dog is irritable. Like, don't touch my feet. Or don't push me on the couch. It can be a little harder to manage. Because if you got a dog that bites all strangers, then you just don't have any strangers to your house and problem solved. But if they're biting people in your family, the family's got to live there too. So it gets a little more challenging, especially when you've got kids in the house. Again, I'll use a basket muzzle. I'll use confinement if I have to. It's important with these dogs to work around them. You're not going to change their attitude. You're not going to be out-dog them. Because occasionally you hear people say, well, don't let them get away with that. Show them who's boss. That's inappropriate behavior. These dogs don't react well to that. And if they're like, well, if you're going to fight me all day, I'm going to fight all day back. Instead, you're going to be like, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to take your food, because oftentimes it's food or toys. So instead of saying, no, I'm going to bother you while you eat until you learn to like it, you're like, no, I'm not going to bother you while you eat. You can relax. And if I need to get by there, we'll work on some way that you want me to get by there. Whether that's I'll toss you a treat and get you used to having people toss you treats as you're eating, or instead of pushing them off the couch, I'll call you off the couch so you want to come off and get a piece of cheese. So you're always kind of working around these dogs, but you can get a lot of improvement by doing that. Medication can be helpful here too, because I do think it makes them a little less irritable. This is one that is not common. It's compulsive behaviors. In people, they call them obsessive compulsive behaviors. And in animals, we've chosen not to say obsessive because we can't ask them if you're thinking about it all the time. But they do seem to. And we can see dogs that lick excessively. We can lick their paws. We can see dogs that chase their tails, that look at shadows and lights. Those behaviors can be normal. Of course, dogs can chase their tail and lick their paws. But what makes it a compulsive behavior is they do it so much that it interrupts their normal life. And so, for example, I saw a tail-chasing dog that they had two dogs, and they had a big yard, and they had a pool, and there was plenty of things for the dogs to sniff and play with, and they'd try to throw balls. One of the dogs played with balls, sniffed, explored, did everything that a dog would expect to do. The other dog spun in circles. And it couldn't be distracted just because you called it. It didn't want to chase a ball. All it could do was just chase its tail and not interact anymore with the other dog, not interact with people. So that's the kind of behavior that I'm talking about. I saw one just last week that it was jumping on shadows. And the owner said if there was no shadows, it would jump and watch for shadows. And so, again, this is how it spent its day. It was just looking at the floor. And so, obviously, to a point where it's affecting its quality of life. They tend to be a little anxious dogs, and there's probably, genetics are, I'm going to say, definitely a significant factor. We've actually, the first genetic compulsive behavior was not found in people. It was found in Doberman Pinschers that flank suck. They found a genetic marker for that. And those dogs will turn and just suck on their side. Usually they don't do any damage to their skin, but it's a quirky behavior that does seem abnormal, and there's a genetic marker for it. And medication can be helpful, but the big thing, if you have a dog that you think might be showing a compulsive behavior, or a cat, because we do see occasional cats too, get help quickly. The sooner you address it, the better your odds are of correcting it or improving it. The longer they do it, if you've been doing it for 4 years and now you decide you're going to try to do something for it, it's a little bit more challenging. One thing I warn people, especially, so there are dogs that tend to be prone to it. The tail chasing, Bull Terriers and German Shepherds are the top two breeds for tail chasing. The lights and shadows, it tends to be Terriers, whether it's Jack Russell Terriers all the way up to Bull Terriers, where they're staring at lights or shadows. The laser pointer is great for cats. They love it. It's fun. A lot of people play with their cats with a laser pointer. Don't do it with your dog. With the dog, it can just get a little warped about it. And some of those dogs, people have to live with the shades down and the lights off. I knew one of the people had to take the light out of their oven because if they opened the oven door and the light shined, the dog was attacking the light. I saw one person, I wish I still had the picture, the dog had gone through drywall because the light came from the window and hit the drywall. So they are intense, so no laser pointers for dogs. And no laugh and giggle when your dog does the tail chasing thing, especially if it's in one of the breeds that's prone to tail chasing. All right, I think we have questions.
So a general question. I know a lot of people are going to leave here tonight and say, I need a trainer or a behaviorist or something. So can you just touch on the difference between a trainer, a behaviorist, and maybe what you do, just so people know how to find the right type of professional for their issue.
So trainers vary in skill, and they are working to get some certifications. Some certifications mean more than others, and I really should have come up here with a list so you could access those. But there's certified, I think it's certified animal trainer, but that's a cat. I don't know. I apologize, but there are some certifications for trainers that may require taking tests, may require taking some classes, all the way up to there are behaviorists that are not veterinarians, but are people who've gotten their master's in animal behavior or done some advanced training, and there are groups that certify them. For things to look for in trainers, I tell people most reputable places will allow you to watch a class first before you sign up. So I encourage you to do that. Watch a class. It should be fun for the people. It should be fun for the dogs. And there should be a lot of positive reinforcement, lots of treats, lots of encouragement. We're trying to get the dog to be successful. If you're having a more serious problem, I would ask your veterinarian for a referral. They probably know the trainers in the area and may be able to send you to a good one. And veterinary behaviorists, we're a little few and far between, but there is a specialty of veterinary behavior, and the Veterinary College of Animal Behavior will have a list of people who have gotten that certification. I haven't. So there's also a list of, there's another American Veterinary Behavior Society, Society of America, Animal Behavior Society of America. I'm sorry. Next time I will have slides with these names. And they have lists of veterinarians who have an interest in behavior and have usually done some education in that route too.
Thank you for that. And if we can compile a list together later and post it on our website in a couple of days so people can refer to that. We have a couple of questions about cat behavior. One particularly from Catherine, who said her cat is constantly eating blankets. There doesn't seem to be a pattern. It happens when she's home or not home. She's been to the vet. All her blood work is normal, but she's worried because she's worried the cat's going to eat so much blanket that she's going to get an obstruction and it's going to be dangerous. So do you have any advice for her?
That is one that we consider one of the compulsive behaviors in cats. There is some question as to whether it occurs with early weaning. And there also some question as to whether there's some genetic aspect of it. It seems to be, a lot of them are Siamese cats. Siberian, so there may be some genetic link. As far as what to do about it, sometimes people will try to address diet and do a high fiber diet, for example, and see if that helps, food out, free choice. Sometimes they're very specific about the fabric they like. They only like wool, for example, and so you can remove wool. I've heard of people leaving one piece of wool for them to work on because wool tends to be a little bit more digestible than because it's a natural fiber. And then sometimes cats have benefited from the same types of medications that are used with people with compulsive disorders and that class of drugs.
Okay, great. A question that I received from both the dog and cat owners is how do you prevent unwanted mounting on both other animals and people?
So it is, it can be a play behavior, it can also be a sex behavior. If it's being influenced by hormones, about 80% of the time, like castrating a dog will take care of most of that behavior, but that's still 20% left that had nothing to do with the sex hormones and was more play and social behavior. And if they're doing it to people, oftentimes they're doing it. They may be doing it for attention because they know it's hard to ignore, and so you can try to substitute a different behavior for attention. I often will use getting a toy. Like if they pick up one of their toys, then I want to play with them. Sometimes it's sitting in front of you. That's the behavior you replace it with. Sometimes if they're not truly dedicated to it, you can just walk away and ignore them. I tell people shun them. The more dramatic, any type of attention-seeking behavior, the more dramatic you can be, the better. So I act, if they do something I didn't like, whether it's a puppy biting me or jumping on me or even the mounting thing, I will act appalled. Just like, oh! And just walk away. Don't look at them. Don't talk to them. Don't touch them. Just like, that's it. I have nothing more to do with you. And then on the flip side, you've always got to offer them a behavior that you will pay attention to. So that's where, you know, if they pick, for my dogs, if they pick up a toy, I'm all over them. I'm like, you got your toy, what a good girl. You know, play with them. Even if I'm on the phone, I can't talk to them, I'll at least look at them like, good dog. So that they know that gets my attention each and every time. And if you jump on me, I'm gone. And since they wanted my attention, they'll do the behavior you like better.
Great, thank you. We have an audience question that says, my 7-pound mixed breed dog just stops walking in the middle of the road and refuses to continue.
I had the same problem with a 70-pound dog that would just drop to the ground when a car came. That was the trigger. So for my dog, that was a fear thing, that she was afraid when the car was coming, and she adopted basically a submissive behavior. She laid on the ground. What I did with her was that desensitization thing. I had to walk to where there was more cars and a piece of grass, and we stood it was a corner, and we stood there until she got more comfortable with the cars passing, and I was doing little obedience things on the grass and getting her used to continuing to move when there's cars around so that we could be safe on the road. My guess is that could be what it is it's just a fear thing. But it was a small dog, right? So while it's not quite as life-threatening because you can at least pick them up. But I would use, since you could anticipate, if you could anticipate when it's going to happen, I would be acting really excited. I would have treats in my hand. If I was going to cross the road, I'd be like, are you ready, Fluffy? Are you ready? Come on, let's go. And I'd be really interesting so that she doesn't have time to think about what was worrying her before.
Great, thank you. We received quite a few other questions about cats scratching things. Furniture in the house, but also people. Some people who are really having a hard time, their cats are scratching them so much that they feel like they have to completely avoid their cat. So what is your advice for a cat scratching objects and scratching people?
Somewhat depends on the age. If it's a kittens, all cat play is predatory play. Like they always want to jump and attack something. I always recommend getting 2 kittens together, and then they take out most of that predatory play on each other. So if I've got somebody with a 4-month-old kitten and they're like, I can't live with this cat anymore, it's horrible, I'll say, why don't you go to the pound and find another 4-month-old kitten that's kind of got a similar personality, and usually they will take it out on each other. The environmental enrichment stuff as well. I also don't like people playing with their hands with the kittens. I like the fishing pole type toys where the object they're chasing is very far away from your hand, because the worst toy I've ever seen was this glove with that little like toys hanging off each finger, and you were supposed to like go like this and play with the kitten. I was like, why would you do that? So environmental enrichment, which might include another kitten, and I have been successful with squirt guns or water. The trick with punishing a cat, when you punish a dog, you go, bad dog, and they're like, ooh, what did I do? You go, bad cat, they're like, why are you insane? You need some wine or something, apparently. So they don't seem to associate it with their behavior. So I want to make any sort of punishment seem like it came from the environment. So if I'm going to use, for example, a squirt bottle because they're climbing up my leg, I want to have that bottle on me all the time, and I want them to think it rains when they climb up my leg. So they start to climb up my leg. Oh, honey, sweetie, you're all wet. Come see Mama. I'll take care of you. So I want them to think it has something to do with their behavior, that it rains when they do it. But it has nothing to do with me. I wasn't the bad guy. And that sometimes helps, whether it's your counter or your curtains. If you're going to use some sort of punishment, what you don't want is it associated with you. Some people walk around the house with their squirt bottle like, go ahead, make my day. But then they just don't do it when you're standing there with your squirt bottle, and as soon as it's out of your hand, they're into trouble again.
Great, thank you. So one thing that I'm sure a lot of dog owners have seen is, how do you stop a dog from begging for food at the table even once he's already had his own food?
So there are a couple of techniques. One is put them in the crate so that they just can't beg and can't get anything. Not rewarding that behavior. So if they never get food from the table, it won't be as much of an issue. Sometimes they've already had some food from the table. If you've got toddlers, for example, it's impossible. What I do with my dogs, when I start with my puppies, I actually have them in the crate until I'm almost done with my dinner. And then I bring them out, I have them on a leash, I have them lie down. If they get up, I have them lie down again. If they get up, I have them lie down again. And if they get up, I have them lie down again 1,000 times while I try to eat that last bite of food. And at the end, when I'm done with my food, I will give them a little treat, whether it's off my plate or wherever. But it's when I'm done, and it's when they're laying down. And so if you reward the behavior you like, I think it's cute when my dogs lay with their little chin on the ground. I think it's adorable. That's what they get rewarded for. If they happen to be laying with their little chin on the ground, they're likely to get something. Any other behavior is not going to be successful. So if they're pawing at me, if they're barking, if they're doing anything else, it's not likely to be successful. But if they're laying there with their big brown eyes looking as cute as possible, that's what I'll reward. So you want to reward the behavior you like. Some people don't like that. They don't even want the dog staring at them. So they'll put a little bed and have the dog lay on their bed. And then if they're laying on their bed, they'll toss a treat to them. If the dog gets off their bed and comes to them, they don't get anything. So just make sure you're rewarding the behavior you like.
Great. So we have a question from Amy, who asks, why is it that my dog barks incessantly at some dogs but is quiet and friendly with others?
It goes back to fear, and they do tell dogs apart. Sometimes it's a visual thing. So, for example, when I had 2 young German Shepherds. My best friend had 2 young Dalmatians, and so they played all the time together. When we were walking down the street, if we saw a Dalmatian, my dogs were nuts, like, oh, yay, we love Dalmatians. So they kind of get used to seeing the dogs that they were used to playing with. They recognize that breed. So sometimes it's a breed thing. Sometimes it's an attitude thing. My current dog can't stand when dogs stare at her. So she has a hard time with border collies. She has a hard time with Rottweilers. She has a hard time with any dog that stares. But if the dog's kind of la la la, she's okay with it. So it's sometimes the dog's behavior, it's sometimes the dog's breed.
We have an audience question. Someone with a cat who's 10 years old, and he acts strange when their boyfriend plays or pets him. Otherwise is very sweet, but seems to not like the boyfriend. So do you have any advice on that? I see this actually tends to be a big problem, especially when the boyfriend moves in, and then it's somebody they're living with. If it's somebody who's coming over frequently and the dog's not happy with them, I have the new person that they don't like be the person who does all the good stuff. The person who owns the dog, that the dog loves already, has to completely ignore the dog. And I usually say for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, ignore your dog. And your boyfriend does all the nice stuff.
takes them for walks, talks to them, feeds them, provides that companionship. What will happen is, because dogs are social animals, eventually they're like, well, you're better than nothing. And they'll start getting used to that new person. But the hardest part is for the one who loves them the most to ignore them. And if there's something that the boyfriend can't do because the dog is scared, that won't let the boyfriend put the leash on or trim nails or anything the dog doesn't like, that's where the primary owner does that stuff.
And would you say it's the same for cats?
I would say it's the same for cats. With cats, I tend to use more. I tell people just be like a Pez dispenser, where the boyfriend just sits there with a bag of Whiskers treats or whatever, and as they're watching TV, they just like fling one that direction, fling one that direction. So they're just tossing treats on the ground. Cat doesn't have to do anything, but just starts to realize, well, it's kind of nice to hang out with this guy because he's got all the good stuff. And they can also, especially if the cats are getting canned food, and some cats are really affectionate and need. My cat, growing up, I always had the dog, and somebody else always had the cat. And when my family was on vacation, it would take about 4 days until the cat got desperate enough. It was like, all right, I'll let the dog person pet me. So sometimes they will get lonely enough to seek attention from somebody else. So I would say yes.
Great. And then just one last question, because we are running out of time. Someone in the audience said they foster dogs and they want to continue fostering. What's the best way to introduce a new dog into the home?
So it's nice if you can kind of match it to what I'm assuming there's a resident dog there. And
yes.
So sometimes you can, do a match.com thing and go, all right, I know you like big dogs and I know you like male dogs, so I'll see if I can foster a big male dog. So sometimes you can kind of find a match that works well for your resident dog. And the actual introduction, I like to do what I call parallel walking, where one person has one dog, one person has another dog, and you kind of walking in the same direction. And if possible, a little bit of distance until they get comfortable around each other, and then you walk closer and closer together. So they're seeing the other dog, they're smelling the other dog, they're hearing the other dog, but they're not coming nose to nose with the other dog, because that can be a little bit of a conflict. So if they're walking beside them and start to get comfortable with them, and then if you can introduce them in a fairly large area, if possible, neutral territory, whether that's somebody else's house where they meet, so it's not home territory for one of the dogs. And if necessary, a basket muzzle. That's how I've had to introduce a couple of my dogs together, was with basket muzzles. So if there is, again, you can relax a little bit, because if there is a problem, you can interrupt them. With the basket muzzles, I never put them in a situation where I think it's going to be bad. Like, all right, you're both going in the same crate, and whoever emerges victorious is the one I keep. Tight spaces are hard for dogs, so you want to have as much space as possible. You want to set it up so everybody succeeds. Don't set them up so anybody fails. But the basket muzzle's nice if you make a mistake and you fail, at least the dogs don't get hurt.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have. I know we didn't get to everyone's questions, so I apologize. But thank you so much, Dr. DeNapoli.
Thank you for having me.